Good morning everyone, my name is Oliever Aying and my topic is gender and human rights. So learning objective. At the end of this lesson, students should able to the different ways that women are harmed and learn what act constitute as violation against a women's human rights. So first is what is human rights? So human rights is a term that used to abuse nowadays, and it also a term that is employed to defend human freedom as well as destroy it. And human rights are seriously violated, with women and indigenous people being the subject worldwide. Kuan sab ang human rights ay fundamental because it provides kibali and fairness and equality sa human society. And without kibali in human rights, in society would go back to ancient times in terms of morality. And the idea of human rights is part of human history. And different civilization of the world has derived the concept of human rights from diverse religious records, considering such as natural rights as coming directly from superior being. So, however, entitlement from employment of those rights was often limited to men. Significant after World War II in 1984, so the United Nations General Assembly decided to implement a Universal Declaration of Human Rights o yung gitawag na UDHR as a foundation of freedom o justice and peace sa world. And however, despite sa global effort of recognition of the foundation rights of all human being, regardless of all their sex, gender and language, religion, political opinion, it remains far from universal. So all improper dealing because of gender and circumstance specific to gender, such as pregnancy or even potential pregnancy and marital status, is a violation of human rights. So gender discrimination, for instance, kibali ang employee kibali mas gipaboran niya ang aw dili niya kadaya paboran ang lang ta kibali like trans or LGBT kay tungod sa iya gender. So may siya murag gender discrimination sa mga trabaho bitaw, mas piliwan kibali na employer yaton straight kibali puro pareha siguro tao, so dapat mag-base siguro sa kung kaya gayud. Then violation of human rights include treating of employer and applicant because he or she does not follow conventional notion of femininity or masculinity. And it also includes demands for sexual favors or physical or verbal harassment like unpleasant remarks or about women or men. So may ito, the next slide. Forms of violence against women's rights. So according to the United Nations Development Fund for Women, violence against women is widespread. So laganap po dyan siya diakon sa Pinas, entire world yan siya, of fundamental human rights and enduring form of gender-based prejudice. All forms of violence against women deny women of their foundation right, all of freedom in terms of their opinion, equality and justice before the law, mobility to have access to information and education, to work, to be employed, and many more. So, violence against women, particularly intimate partner violence and sexual violence, in a significant public health problem and violation of women's human rights. Then, violence against women has different forms, namely, so may domestic violence. So in domestic violence, this is a form of violence occurs when person tries to assert or pursahon niya partner nga na kusgaan biya pasakitan siguro ni, then it can be emotional, financial, physical or sexual abuse kay pasakitan niya nga na gihapon ang abuso kibali. Then the major type of abuse committed against women experiencing domestic violence are, so number 1 is physical abuse. So physical abuse amo yun lang tamangulata. So this is perceptible types of abuse. It may result in physical injury or some case can be life, so makapatay yan siya kung masobran. May ban magka black eye bitaw. emotional, psychological abuse. So this is most common type of violence experienced by women and children, is deemed by many as the worst kind of abuse. So may to. Then financial economic abuse. So this form of domestic violence which abuser uses money kibali to control his partner. So masabot siya kibali murag kontrolon niya partner tungod sa may kwarta kibali. Gamitan niya ng kwarta da. So rape and sexual assault. So this type of violence is one of the worst and most heinous forms of assault of a human to another that can be affected. So amin man rape, like amagos magkuha ng babae. Then prostitution. So most women involved in prostitution are poor, abused, and have low self-esteem. So which limits your capacity to identify alternative income generation opportunities. So amin iban magpabayad akan lang para makakuan mabuhi sa ila pero gamiton lang nila kabali ila kaugalingon, which is dili daan maraot yan siya. And human trafficking, it is a recruitment, transport, and transfer of person with or without consent or knowledge. Mahibawanan niya na balin siya sa laing, for example sa Pinas dadon siya sa laing lugar, bali poslit sila bito na illegal kibali na di na muagi sa kuan immigration across national borders using different form of coercion including abduction, deception, and fraud. Female genital mutilation involves the partial or total removal of external female genitalia of the girl for cultural or non-therapeutic reasons. Next. Forced marriage. So, pugson pagkasal. So, ini forced marriage is, amo yun, kibali, higug mata si pugson pagkasal, samot na kibali ka, o yun ang yung pamilya, pero bawal ka dyan siya. Dapat, imugi dapat kagustuhan. So this type of violence women takes place when the bride does not want to marry the groom but forced by others and usually by their families. So amitong lang ko. Kasagaran nila sa puan pamilya nagpugos kay tungod sa reputation or sa kwarta. And sexual harassment. So it occurs when unwanted conduct has purpose or effect of violating a person's dignity and creating an intimidating, degrading, hostile, humiliating or offensive environment for the person. So mayon like sexual harassment, ikin siguro man hipo man hawid bitaw amin siya. So that's all for my topic. Thank you.
Good day everyone, I am Zoe Grace Gabutero and this is the continuation for the report of Group 7, Lesson 2, Women and Empowerment. In this lesson, the objectives are, at the end of this lesson, you should know the various Filipino women that pioneered feminist activism in the Philippines. You should also be able to identify some Philippine laws that empower Filipino women. So, women empowerment. The importance of women empowerment is a universal issue. This is a global issue about helping women to make decisions in their lives without any restriction from society. Women empowerment is a process of increasing the capacity of women to choose and to transform those choices into desired action and outcomes. It is a process that makes her an agent of change. Empowering women through movement. The women's movement in the Philippines has a long and colorful history. In 1893, Logia de Adoption was formed. This Masonic Lodge of Filipino Women's Society was mainly composed of the enlightened, intellectual, and members of the well-to-do and highly respected families. The following are known Filipino women patriots. First, Trinidad Tixon. She was known as the mother of Biak na Bato, who began her revolutionary activities during the preparations for the Revolution of 1896 by procuring arms in various raids. Number 2, Hilarha Aguinaldo. She was the wife of General Emilio Aguinaldo, who founded the Asociación de Damas de Cruz Roja. In English, Women's Red Cross Association in 1899, an organization which coordinated the humanitarian work of the women. Constancia Poble. She founded the Liga Femenina de la Paz, in English, Philippine Women's League for Peace in 1902. Concepcion Felix de Calderon. She founded the Asociación Feminista Filipina, in English, Feminist Association of the Philippines in 1905. So the other feminist organization and leaders. Association Feminist Ilongga or Association of Ilongga Feminist was founded by Pura Villanueva Lalao, who called for women's suffrage in 1906. The second, La Protección de la Infancia. So in English, Protection of Infants, was founded in 1907, which provided babies with milk among the educated mothers on maternal and infant care. So Gabriela Silang, 1763, the first woman general and heroine of Ilocos. She was known as the first Filipino woman to lead a revolt during the Spanish colonization of the Philippines. Teresa Magbanua, 1897. She was better known as the Visayan Joan of Arc, a Filipino school teacher and military leader from Iloilo. Marcela Marcelo, 1897, the woman general of the revolution, died in Battle of Pasong Santol, Dasmariñas, Cavite. Was also known as a Silang Bagsik, Ferocious Sela, and General Sela, or General Sela. Hailed from Malibay, formerly a part of Palaniag, now in Pasig City. Ageda Kahabagan, 1899. The only women in the list of generals in the Philippine Army who fought in the battlefield against the Spanish forces and became known as General Ageda. Number 7. Delfina Natividad, 1900. She was a well-known Filipino together with Marcela Agoncillo and her daughter Lorenza, who seemed to gather the Philippine flag, and for being the niece of the national hero of the Philippines, Jose Rizal. Gregoria de Jesus, 1943. She was also known as Aling Oryang, who founded and became the keeper of the documents of the women's chapter of the Katipunan of the Philippines. She is the wife of Gat Andres Bonifacio, the leader of the Katipunan. Laws that empower the Filipino women. The advancement towards gender equality became about true women's movements, increased number of Filipino political representatives, increased number of educated women, higher specificity of women's issue instituted under the legislation, and the focused application of the laws. The following are the laws formed by the Philippines government to advance the rights of women. So the first law is Philippine Constitution, Article 13, Women, Section 14. The state shall protect all working women by providing safe and healthful working conditions taking into account their maternal functions and such facilities and opportunities that will enhance their welfare and enable them to realize their full potential in the service of the nation. So, the law number 2, RA 6725 of 1989, an act to strengthen the prohibition on discrimination against women concerning terms and conditions of employment. RA 6949 of 1990, an act to declare March 8th as a special working holiday and to be known as National Women's Day. RA 6955 of 1990, an act to declare the unlawful way of pairing Filipino women to foreign nationals for marriage on a mail order basis and other similar practices, including the advertisement and publication. So we are now in law number 5, RA 6972 of 1990, an act to establishment a barangay-based daycare center to free women for other activities like taking a job or going back to school. So we are here now in law number 6, RA 7192 of 1992, an act to uphold women's integration as equal partners of men in development and nation building. Law number 7, RA 7322 of 1992, an act to increase the maternity benefits in favor of women workers in the private sectors. So, law number 8, RA 7600 of 1992, an act to provide both government and private environment where essential physical, emotional, and psychological needs of mothers and infants immediately after birth are fulfilled through the practice of rooming in the breastfeeding. Law number 9, RA 7688 of 1994, an act to give representation to women in Social Security Commissions. Law number 10, RA 7877 of 1995, an act to declare sexual harassment unlawful in the employment, education, or training environment. So, law number 11, RA 7882 of 1995, an act to provide aid to women, especially to those who own small businesses in order to fully harness the talents and skills of the female labor force. Law number 12, RA 8353 of 1997, an act to reclassify the definition of the crime of rape into a crime against persons. So law number 13, RA 8369 of 1997, an act to establish family courts to have exclusive original jurisdiction over child and family cases. Law number 14, RA 8505 of 1998, Rape Victim Assistance of Protection and Protection Act, an act to provide protection and assistance for rape victims. Law number 15, RA 8972 of 2000, Solo Parents Welfare Act, an act to provide benefits and privileges to solo parents and their child. Law number 16, RA 208 of 2003, Anti-Trafficking in Persons Act, an act to institute policies to eliminate human trafficking, especially to women and children. So law number 17, RA 9262, 2004, Anti-Violence Against Women and Their Children Act, an act to declare criminalization of violence against women and their children, VAUC, and protection of women and their children into the context of marital dating or common law relationship, declaration of VAUC as public crime. So we are here now in law number 18, RA 10 354 of 2012, Responsible Parenthood and Reproductive Health Act, an act to provide for a national directive of responsible parenthood and reproductive health. So the last but not the least, law number 19, RA 9710, Magna Carta of Women, an act to remove discriminations against women by fulfilling, recognizing, protecting, and promoting their rights, especially those in the marginalized sectors. And I guess that would be all. Thank you for listening. God bless.
Good afternoon. My name is Timkang. Uh, the topic for today is Lesson 3, LGBT Rights and Struggles. The Philippines as a democratic society claims to give equal access and opportunity to each citizen. However, despite this scenario, many minority groups, particularly the Filipino or the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and the transgender or LGBT, are still treated as second class and not politically recognized. This group of people continues to experience stigma, prejudice, and discrimination in society. Due to their sexual orientation, this stigma is manifested through bullying, teasing, and harassment of LGBT children and adolescents in families, schools, and communities. So, grabe no, ang ilang situation about this LGBT people, treated sila as a second class and not politically recognized. Gi-discriminate sila, gi-bully, gi-teasing, and harassment. Kibali, murag, just to annoy ang usa ka tawo, kibali ini, for example, bayot, gay, murag, garaan ra bitaw. Yes. According to the International Convention of Civil and Political Rights, or ICCPR, the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender, or the LGBT persons have fulfilled freedom in order to guard the access and enjoyment of these rights. So, kuan ko kibali ni, hatagan sila ng freedom para makuha nila ang ila enjoyment about their life, their rights, and their life. Struggle faced by the LGBT in the society. LGBT has become an accepted designation for minorities based on the sexual and gender orientation. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender, or the LGBT people, mostly experience various forms of socio-economic, political, and cultural injustice. They are suffering from discrimination, harassment, and the threat of violence from the mainstream. They face difficulties in growing in society where heterosexual is presented as the only acceptable society where heterosexual is presented as the only acceptable orientation, and homosexual is deviant. Some highlights in the struggles with the LGBT people across the world are follows. So, nga di sa struggle faced by LGBT in the society, kibali, suffer sila ng mga discrimination, harassment, and the threat of violence from the mainstream, kibali, pamaagi sa social media, yaon, mga bully, mga pasakit, o sa, they face difficulties in growing in society, o kay kuan lagi, murag, murag, ang tao gayud sanay na gayud ng to sexuality. Ang sex, mao yon to sex, ang yon ang bai og laki, bai og ug lagi kibali ya sila kibali ang society ang maanad ng homosexuality bitaw. Ug sa pagakuan sila pag bully. Yes. So LGBT people across the world are as follows. These are the number one is homophobia. It referred to the fear of aggression toward gay people, but also refer to stigma arising from social ideologies about homosexuality. It is the culturally produced fear or prejudice against homosexual, gay bashing, living in the homophobic society forces many LGBT people to hide their sexuality for the fear of adverse reaction and the consequence of coming out. Oo, kasagaran bitaw. Yes, na tungod yaon pag-treat ng mga tao sa ila o some LGBTQ people i-haidakan bitaw nila ah, ang ang ila sexuality just because of the fear of adverse reaction to the people around them. So mahadlok sila mo lugwa bitaw kana marginalization and social exclusion. It is the core of the exclusion from fulfilling and full social lives and at individual, interpersonal, and societal levels. People under this status relatively less control over their lives and the resources available to them. They become stigmatized and are often at the receiving end in negative public attitudes. Their exclusion and discrimination in mainstreaming society have resulted in following. Yes, attempt suicide. Number one is attempt suicide. Oo, nagpakamatay tungod sa ibali wala nila makaya ng mga pagkuan sa ila, sa mga tao bitaw pag discriminate sa ila, how they are LGBT people o unang ilang bitaw mga experience bitaw na dawat tamo kibali sa mga tao. Oo, yay kibali amo ini number one is attempt suicide, being ignored and isolated in the community, dili pansinon, dropping out of school. Yes, dropping out of school. Yaong gayud yaong kibali tungod sa mga bash ng mga tao, yay mga LGBTQ people or lesbian, gay, or etc. na dili na bitaw ganahan mo di na ganahan bitaw mo eskwela tungod kay yaon ng lack of family and social support, living home and family kibali yaon ra sila sa bahay, dili sila ganingan bitaw mo mulugwa. Transfer to other countries for seeking safer. Yes, ang transfer to other countries for seeking safer kibali kibali ning balin sila sa lain lugar or lain country, kay di sila ganahan diri kibali na lugar kay grabe ka worse diri lugar full of exotic people. 3. Psychological distress. LGBT people face considerable levels of discrimination, harassment, and stigmatization in their day-to-day life. Many LGBT face stress due to very high levels of homophobic bullying and verbal attacks. This also affects their mental health, leading to significant levels of psychological distress, self-harm, and suicidality. Other experiences that could negatively impact psychological distress are as follow: casual homophobic comments, childhood sexual abuse, harassment by neighbors, no protection against discrimination at work. So these are the psychological distress negatively impact mga negative thoughts sa mga tao. Number 4, victims of hate crimes and violence. Victims of hate crimes and violence. LGBT people are sometimes targets of sexual and physical assault, harassment, and hate crimes. These crimes also known as bias motivated crimes occur when a perpetrator targets a victim because of this or her perceived membership in a specific social group, usually defined by racial group, sexual orientation, class, ethnicity, gender identity, or political affiliation. Ibali dili sakto na pagtrato, dili pantay kay ang yaon bayot siya, then ang iniyaki murag for example na sangkot sa gulo, then ang kuan pagayod ang lalaki kibali ay murag member o for example member sa PNP, yung bitaw murag dili pantay ang pagtrato kibali kay ang yan to kay mapaan bitaw siya dili kibali dili murag pangatian bitaw, dili tuuhan pa sila of the boy kay sagi yung kabayas